So I lost my grandfather in December. So the day after my wedding ceremony at 6 o'clock in the morning, my dad called me and informed me that my grandfather had passed away. I was in a foreign country, so there's no way I could come back, and there's no way I could do the funeral based upon what was going on at the time. I knew it was coming, and it was probably one of the worst feelings in the world, and it has affected me greatly. I had his mom around for a while when I was younger, and then I had my grandma's mom around as well, but he was generally the main grandparent that I had for a lot of my life. And it has been extremely difficult for me because it's, when you look for advice or something and you want to call him, you can't do it no more. They don't make long distance phone calls like that. So it's definitely something you want to pay attention to. And I really wish I could talk to him again. I wanted to talk to him before and do an episode with him about his life before he passed away, but I didn't have that option. And even then, he had cancer in his voice box, so he didn't sound that great, and he had a really hard time talking because of that. So it wouldn't have worked out anyway. But I do remember, and I will say this, is some of the life lessons he taught me, definitely worth it. And I have to say that regardless of what you see on my channel, a lot of it comes from, my grandfather and what he instilled in me. So I definitely want to say that I miss my grandfather greatly, and it's been really difficult for me, as I mentioned before. I would strongly suggest that if you have a grandparent, talk to them, get to know their story, because they're a part of a generation that once they all die out, that history will be gone with them. The way things were, the way things are, such and such, they're gone. It's gone forever. And that generation is slowly dying off, and my grandfather was a part of it. And unfortunately, I really wish I could have had him around longer, but such is life, unfortunately. And as much as we don't want them to go, as much as we're not ready for them to go, sometimes that is the way that it is, unfortunately. And I really am feeling much better because he did have cancer. So it's just, for me, it's not plaguing his body anymore, and he's not suffering anymore. And at a certain point, when you deal with not really deal with someone, but when you're interacting with someone that has a terminal illness like that, when they do pass, you finally feel like they're at peace, and it takes a long time to accept that, but because you don't want them to go, you don't want them to leave, but you can visibly see and you could hear that they're not doing well, and they really are suffering, and you think in your head like, oh man, and then when they finally do pass, sorry if I get emotional about this, but when they finally do pass, it's difficult, it's hard to accept it because you don't want, like I said, you don't want them to go, but when they do, they do. And then you realize, it takes a while to realize after, it's okay, they're not hurting anymore, they're not in pain anymore, it's over. And that's really what it took me a while to understand, and why it took me about 4 months to make this videos, because I'm still trying to accept that, or it's like I wasn't ready for him to leave. And unfortunately, he did, because he had no other choice, obviously. So, and just, I made a message about this, and his memory lives through me, and I hope that when I'm a grandfather, I can leave that same lasting impression on my grandchildren that he did on me. Some of the values that he gave me and things of that nature. And it's strange when you have, your grandparents, especially if you're really close to them, it feels like a part of you has died. And that generally goes for most of anyone, as far as, if you lose a parent, if you lose a sibling, if you lose a significant other, you lose a friend, a really good friend, and they end up passing away, it's like a part of you dies. And it's really strange. And I don't want to say that I've gotten over it, because I haven't. There's no way. It's just different. I don't know how to explain it to you. It's not something you get over. And I think that's okay. I really do. I think that's fine. It's just different, and sometimes you think to yourself, well, what would he do in this situation? And then you remember the voice. And that's one of the hard things is, I still remember my great-grandmother's voice and my other great-grandmother's voice. I'll remember his voice by doing that, thinking like, well, if I were looking for advice, what would he tell me? And a lot of the times, my grandfather he was very direct, but he wasn't rude in any way. He would never swear or anything like that, but he was very direct. It was very, very easy to understand him. And he was pretty savage sometimes, but he was really direct. And you could fault him for a lot of things, but he would never lie to you, and he would tell you the truth if you asked him. So I do have that quality, and a lot of times that backfires on me because a lot of people like being lied to. So, yeah, I generally ask if someone asks me something like, "Do you really want to know the answer to that question?" And then if they tell me yes, then I tell them, and don't get offended because I'm going to tell you the truth. And that's the way that he was, you know. But he wouldn't ask that. He would just tell someone, and sometimes it would offend people and rub them the wrong way. But you know, if you want if you're looking for whatever answer you're looking for, you know, you don't want the truth, then don't ask it. I loved him until death, and I still do. And it's something that I can't escape, you know. And one of the cool things is I was able to get some of his lighters when he used to smoke cigarettes. And honestly, he worked in the C-5 planes during Vietnam, and I know probably lots of cancer-causing chemicals and asbestos. And then he used to smoke a lot too, because that was normal back in the day. That was very normal, smoking cigarettes. And he did that for probably, he said, like 20 or 30 years. He had smoked cigarettes, and then before then, he was inside of those C-5 planes. And there's no telling what kind of chemicals were in there. So let alone, he told me when he was in Vietnam, as far as I understand, is, you know, they were exposed to Agent Orange, you know, various forms of it or whatever. And so he said, I'm really surprised I lived till I'm 80. He said, I don't want to live long enough to where I watch my children die because I don't think I could take it. And I can understand that, you know, like I have two of my friends that are like that as well. They that are elderly, they or seniors, I guess you could consider it. But they have said the same thing to me. I don't want to live long enough where I watch my children die and my grandchildren die. I couldn't take the pain. Like I don't think I could take it. And I think that's awesome. You know, you got to visit your children and all your grandchildren, and then before, like I said, before you start burying your own children, you know, they punched out. And I think that if I were to have a way to go, I think that's what I would have done. You know, hopefully I do have that option where, you know, if I do pass away, that it will be like that, you know, where I get to watch my children and them have their children, and then I just eventually pass away before I get to watch my own children die. Because I think about that a lot now that I'm getting older, and me and my wife are thinking about starting to have a family. Is that same thing that has been told to me, and I don't know if anyone has been told that or not, but that's basically what I think. And like I said, just realize that it's okay not to be all right. You know, seek help, talk to people, make yourself get interactive. Everyone deals with grieving differently, but don't let it destroy you. Don't do self-destructive habits. It's real easy. I've seen this so many times. People pass away and people get crazy and they start on a real self-destructive path. I mean, just absolutely just horrible for them. So I would say before you get to that point, please seek help. Like, don't go down a destructive path because it's not what that person would have wanted for you anyway. If you need to, seek professional help. If you're thinking of doing something harm to yourself or someone else or whatnot, please do seek therapy. Like I said, I'm not a medical advice. This is not medical advice. It's just something that, you know, as a person that has lost their grandfather, I would strongly suggest. Everyone deals with things differently, so please do keep that in mind. And honestly, something else that I have recognized is you can't run away from it. You know, you can't just think, oh, they're off in a faraway land. They're off here, they're off there. No, you know, they're gone. And that's taken a while because you think, oh, they're just on vacation and, you know, they'll be back. And no, and what was really hardest part is after they had buried him and had their service and everything is I wasn't able to be there because, like I said, I was in Mexico at the time. So when I visited his house in January, you could feel the presence. And I mean, you could feel it. And it just felt like he would come back in at any moment. You know, you could feel it. And you could feel the presence of my grandfather being there. And it was amazing. And it just felt like any moment, you know, he would come walking around, but that's not the case anymore. And it just feels so strange if you've ever experienced that, where you're sitting there and you're like, man, it's just strange. I don't know how to explain it. You know, when I visited his house and you're sitting there in the chair and you just feel it. You just feel the presence of of my grandfather. I don't know if any of you have ever experienced that, where you've had a loved one pass away and you go to their residence, you could just feel them being there. And it's like, it's really, really hard on you. You know, it really is. As you think, oh, they'll be back, or they'll, you know, I mean, your mind starts telling you things, and it's not true, unfortunately. Um, so that's something else that I had to deal with as far as like internally trying to cope and accept it. You know, and I grieved for a long time, and I still am. You know, I still am, and I don't have any shame in saying that because I think it's normal to do that, and I think it's healthy to talk to others and try to do the and try not to, like I said, indulge in self harm or destructive behavior. That's not going to help you in any way, and the people around you are really going to be concerned for you, and you don't want to do that. You don't want to do that. That's not the road to go down, in my opinion. I think, you know, you want to keep their memory, and that's the best thing is if you speak of them and you talk to them, you know, talk about them, they never die. They live through you, you know, and that's something that I think is so interesting, you know. And honestly, now I really wish I would have talked to him more about his family and his parents and things of that nature. I mean, I did some, but because he's the last one to know that stuff, you know. That generation doesn't exist anymore, and everything they've done, everything they did is gone, you know. It's gone with him passing away. It's over. You know, it's never going to come back. And I really wish I would have asked him more. And if I could have played one more domino game with him, I would have done it. But I got his dominoes that I played with him with. You know, we played with a red set of dominoes, and I'll never forget them because I have them right now. And I hopefully one day, and they came from his mom, which is my great grandmother, which she would always ask me, "Baby, do you want a sandwich?" She would always tell me that, and she would be smoking a cigarette. And she was like 90. She died in her 90s, and she would listen to Led Zeppelin and rock music all the time, and she would be smoking cigarettes. And I'd never seen someone flick so many cigarettes. I mean, she could get rid of a cigarette like you would never, like if someone's around her, she would just, I mean, it was awesome, like the way she would just flick. It's really like, it was really cool. She was a character. But yeah, you know, that domino set came from her as well. So it's like been in the family now. This is the fourth generation because it passed over my dad, but we've had those dominoes for a long time. And I think that's going to be cool because a lot more memories are going to be made with those dominoes. So definitely. And that, once again, that goes into keeping it alive, keeping them alive through you. And I definitely would suggest that. So if you guys feel the way that I do right now, if you've made it this far, definitely leave a comment. Tell me how you're grieving, how you've helped yourself, how you can help others in the comments. Please feel free to do so, and I'll answer the comments as well. That way, I like to see what you guys have to offer to this conversation because this is how I feel right now. And like I said, I waited 4 months to do it. So please do put down in the comments. If you want to follow my daily content, down in the description, excuse me, my Instagram. And then I'll leave a video about my friend Dan, Talks with Elders, the episode 1. I was going to start doing that again, but it's been really difficult for me because I wanted to make my grandfather episode 2, but I haven't. So I can't now, obviously. So definitely I'll leave that as the end video. And with that being said, I'm going to wrap it up here. Thank you guys for visiting, and y'all have a wonderful day.